Hello, and welcome to season 2 of In Light of It All, the podcast exploring the fascinating ways light and design shape our lives. Light influences everything, your sleep, mood, and even your hormones. Here we dive into everything light touches: colors, surfaces, textures, psychology, neuroaesthetics, and chronobiology. We'll also explore the future of healthy design, blending the latest technology with our ancient rhythms. We spend 90% of our lives indoors, more time than maximum security prisoners, and yet light, the force that guides how we feel and function, is often overlooked. My goal is simple: to take incredible academic research and distill it into bite-sized insights that even I can understand. If you like the sound of that, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and without further ado, let's get into it.
So Hugo, look, welcome. Thank you so much for coming along. I've been really looking forward to this. Normally, the sensible way to start is just to learn a little bit about who you are, your practice, and I wonder if you might be able to just sort of introduce yourself and your work a little.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me, Xander. I mean, you know us well, but for the audience, we're an architectural and interior design practice. So, we're a RIBA chartered practice, but I guess how we sort of differentiate ourselves is that we focus on architecturally led projects with a view to having that holistic design. And I think holistic design comes through in biophilia and building biology and all of these things. And, we're not getting away from luxury. We are a high-end residential and luxury design practice.
And you do it very well. I mean, I've obviously seen a lot of your projects, been involved in a few, and the sort of the attention to detail is exactly why, I wanted to get you in this room for a chit chat. How do you, I guess, sort of diving into it, how do current building regulations balance functionality with human well-being? Where do you kind of see there might be room for improvement?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about this a number of times, but there is a massive gap in where building control sits and really looking at, I use the word holistic again, because looking at a design of either a new build or a retrofit refurbishment and getting to the level of detail that our clients expect surpasses building control in every single aspect. And actually building control becomes a little bit of just a tick box exercise, and I feel that the UK and British standards and everything is all very well, but it's really a line not to go below rather than to get there and think that you've satisfied everything. So and a little bit like sort of going to the doctor. It's a tick box exercise. It's rare that you actually look at the whole the body as a whole, whether it's history of mental trauma that has led to physical trauma or whatever it is. So you're looking at a building in a holistic, not like we're just going, right, well, we need to meet these U values, we need to create limited, this amount of ventilation in bathrooms. We need to go way beyond that and bring all of those elements together, and that's what building control really lacks.
I guess this is kind of the equivalent of, if you go to university and you flunk every class, you can't really be asked to go to any of the lectures. You kind of do your last minute cramming of revision and stuff, and you ultimately walk out with a pass. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, you attended, but you didn't really soak any of the extra additional bits that qualify you with a first or 2-1, or that exemplary result that leaves you with a properly finished article with multiple strings to their bow.
Yeah, and I think we're a RIBA chartered practice, and all of our architects, there's 7 years in training, and that goes way beyond what building control requirements are, and the knowledge and the science and the art behind architecture, because it's not just building control, we need to meet this view value, etc. It's more about looking about what the home or office needs to be for its occupants, and in its location.
So in your, as you say, 7 years of studying, do you think that the syllabus has enough focus on things like biology or psychology or evolution, or there's that whole question of form over function, the why versus the what. What are you designing as opposed to how are you living in the environment that we now call our habitat? Do you think the education syllabus is actually setting up designers to create habitats in a way that really we need as human beings, or do you think there's a bit of a hole in the education with regards to sort of core principles of education?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I think that's nearly a rhetorical question, because there is most certainly a hole in the education system, the design education system, because there isn't enough emphasis on light, on the well-being of the occupants. That's really kind of covered off in building control, but then building control doesn't go into enough depth. And our architects, we discuss this a lot with our architectural team and our interior design team, both qualifications in very different genres, and seeing what there is missing and filling those holes with our CPDs, our continual professional development. And really that's why we have gone down the road of both building biology and becoming certified IBN building biologists, and also passive house. So Alex, our head of architecture, he's a certified passive house designer. So we're not getting away from luxury, and I think there is a little bit of a stigma attached to sort of well-being houses being sort of glass boxes that are rather sterile and of no sort of luxury and texture and all of this. And I think kind of trying to get rid of that stigma is something that we're really trying to push, whilst balancing with this well-being, physical design well-being, whether it's spa pools, saunas. Saunas are trending hugely. One of the points I think we'll discuss later is trends, but that combined with the actual well-being that no one really talks about in the materials we're using, the light, the air quality, the water quality, and the electromagnetic quality of the building and what we're using.
Well, this is a really interesting sort of, I guess, layer which you go into, which I think a lot of practices possibly overlook. But so I heard you talking. We obviously know each other for a while, but we sort of did back-to-back talks, so we're quite nicely woven into each other at Light 24 last year, and you were talking about electromagnetic radiation and ultraviolet, infrared, and this whole sort of holistic approach to materials and light and texture and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, is that essentially building biology? Could you explain building biology in your own terms? Because it's a unique perspective that you have, and I think very forward thinking, and in my opinion, what the next trend should really be.
Yeah, I mean, building biology has more than 20 principles. We've synthesized those into our 5 principles, and those really are the core building principles that I feel have been left behind. We've got air quality, we've got water quality, we've got materials, we've got electromagnetic elements, and those are the core principles of what it is that we need to sort of answer before we can get into any sort of design of the luxury finishes. But the electromagnetic and light, you're the expert on light. I spoke after you at Light 24, which was a difficult gig given that's your genre.
I thought you nailed it.
But I tried anyway. But frequencies, whether it's light frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies, they're all of benefit or detriment to the human body, and I think that's where we really meet. You and I meet, and our common interests in light, but also the control of that light. I mean, you produce wonderful light fittings which we use in a lot of our projects, and it's how we control those lights as well. So it's that holistic approach. Like the end product ultimately is what our clients are seeing, what that light is. The light in this studio is very white.
I've got my blue light blocking glasses on.
Yeah,
for the
it really, we've got to work back from what do you as a client want sitting on your nice green sofa in your home. First of all, you want that green sofa to look like a green sofa rather than a grey sofa, which is what you do brilliantly, and having the right colour rendition to actually see the right colours. But moving back, how are we controlling that? What is happening with electricity? Electricity is a big topic of conversation. How we're producing it, because we've got to use electricity to heat, to light, to cook, everything. But how are we using that electricity? What radio waves are we putting around the house? Where are we sleeping? What wiring is around our bed? I mean, you wouldn't sleep with a router on your bedside table. I hope you don't sleep with a Wi-Fi router. It's common sense.
I actually did. I live in one of the sort of streets, and it's one of the worst Wi-Fi parts of the whole of London.
Yes.
And it was feast or famine, because I can't remember what it was, but it was like abysmal speed. Me and my wife couldn't be on a Teams call at the same time.
Yeah.
Even if we were both on the same call, it just wouldn't work. TV would just drop out. And then on the other side of the fence was the fastest in London, which was G Network, and we managed to get that installed after 2 years of trying to get our building to accept it and the council and everything. It was a nightmare. But the day that they switched that router, which was just in our hallway, and then the door that shuts right, probably about 2 meters away from where I sleep, was this router. When we swapped it over, I couldn't work out what it was, but the first 3 days of having that router installed, I didn't sleep. And I really viscerally felt the effect of that radiation on my body. And then my older brother's starting to, he's renovating his house, and he wanted to, being in the lighting industry, we wanted to have Kasambi, which is this Bluetooth broadcast, scene setting, easy, cheaper version of Dali wiring, where a lot of extra cabling and maintenance and control. So, it's a cheaper, adaptable, like a wireless speaker.
Yeah.
And his wife quite rightly said, no, I'm not doing that, because the radiation really does have an effect.
It's another Bluetooth, another Wi-Fi.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't know what the terminology is, but I guess it's pollution, really. It's
EMF pollution.
EMF pollution, is that a real thing?
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely is. I even read in the paper this morning or yesterday morning that homes next to pylons are significantly reduced in value. No one wants to be near a radio mast.
We've got... Sorry to interrupt you on this, but we've got some... My dad was actually telling me this the other day, that the local pub which he goes to, there's a family that have been going there for, as long as we've been there. We've lived at that house for 30 years, so my dad's a local regular at that pub. And this family has 4 cases of cancer in the same, literally mum, dad, son, I think even grandchild, because their home was directly underneath the mains power line, which is crazy.
So we've got all this
3 generations,
anecdotal and medically proven data that electromagnetic frequencies do harm the body. There is no shadow of a doubt about that. Where there's a bit of, not controversy, but we've never really stopped and thought about adding all these Bluetooth, wireless. If you look at anything on Amazon, even for your house, new latest thing that can control your lighting.
Alexa compatible.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything is wireless. We are actually, a lot of our clients are asking for simplicity, end-to-end wiring, less wireless signals.
Is that after you educate them, or is it they're now leading
They
you
want
with the request?
they want
or-
simplicity, and
Yeah.
we're saying, well, that's great because that means we can build you and design you a healthier home. So what they want, this whole, back in the 90s where you could, turn on your fire from on your way back from holiday or whatever it was, remotely. People aren't really interested in that. They want, old analog, milled brass light switches, so that we provide that beautiful design. We do use, as something like Lutron, lighting, because it allows us not only to control your lights, but it also gives us the ability to integrate systems that allow us to, say, turn off the Wi-Fi at night. So Lutron is, as you know, is a low voltage. So only low voltage goes to the control, and so you're sending low voltage signals, which is not
invasive and damaging.
Exactly. And so we're doing a lot. So by the bedside table, you have all lights off, but also all Wi-Fi is off. So that sends a signal to the rack that you see in all these houses and just shuts the whole thing down, so that there's no Wi-Fi at night when you're sleeping. Because ultimately that's where we've got to be realistic. People need Wi-Fi. They want Wi-Fi. But where you really don't want Wi-Fi is when you're asleep. And that is when your body is at its most vulnerable. That's when it needs to recover. That's when it needs to repair itself. It can't repair itself if it's under constant attack from frequencies that constantly firing around your house.
So how did you get into... Because again, like I said, I saw your talk and it was really insightful, and I think it's a very difficult thing to synthesize so many complex subjects into palatable bite-sized chunks that then have a real impact on everyone in the audience that left. And I was one of them, and I can confirm you very much did that. I think what I always find striking is, the level of effort that has clearly gone into you continuing that, progressive professional development, and you saying that you very carefully select the CPDs or the independent professionals that come in and then further educate you on their area of specialization. How is it? Enthusiasm? What's driving your sort of wish to learn more about creating healthier environments? Is it personal lifestyle stuff? Is it sort of an added benefit to clients? Is it to help train your employees? Is it what sort of gets you really ignited by that curiosity and that passion to learn more about how you can create better spaces?
I think, like all branches in the road in life, there are a multitude of different elements that bring you to choosing whatever path you choose. And me and my brother started the practice, and we've always, from when we started, we wanted to make a difference for our clients, but also a difference of interest for us. We are both the type of person that where if you give us a subject matter, we will research it till the nth degree, sometimes to our detriment, but I think to our clients' benefit. But at the same time, I was diagnosed 2015 with an autoimmune blood disorder, and whilst I'm not blaming any of these elements that we've discussed on that, it started to open up my eyes and my brother's eyes to really unpicking everything from human lifestyles, from the food we eat to the beds we sleep in. And I don't design food, nor do I produce food, although I know a lot about food and the benefits. But that brings us to the homes that we design, and ultimately we're doing all of those things in the homes. We're making the food, we're sleeping, we're bathing, we're drinking, we're raising children. And I was like, well, me and my brother were like, well, why aren't we focusing more of our attention on making sure everything that we're designing is a benefit, not just neutral, because just doing things agnostically is not okay, because you're just surfing that line of building control. I'm not saying building control is great. It means we've got safe homes for people to live in.
But that's the baseline expectation of a designer.
Yeah, it's safe.
It's
like
the
I've
responsibility, not the potential.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, one of our clients once said, you know, the reason we went to you is because when we're not expecting baseline, we're expecting exceptional, and yeah, that's what we deliver in every aspect. And I
Were
don't.
you wearing a cape or something at the time?
It was a black one, I think. But I don't think. Again, I'm just going to loop back to all of these elements that we talk about. You know, building biology, which my brother is specialising in. Alex in our office, who's passive house. All of these elements do not prohibit wonderful, tactile, textureful, rich designs. And that, for me, combining those two was the passion. Me and my brother always had a passion for design. But how can we bring an added benefit? You know, we say comfort is the new luxury, because you know, we live in a world with Instagram, Pinterest. I mean, we are inundated. Our brains can't.
I deleted Instagram for about the 9th time last night. I was like, what? I had this page pops
There's
up.
too much information.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. So what do we want? We want comfort. We want analog comfort. I'm not saying analog in terms of like get rid of Wi-Fi and all the laptops and phones and everything, but try and make our lives more comfortable and simpler and healthier. You know,
well, we know the science between, you know, all of us have ADHD now, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because we've been, you know, neuroplasticity wise.
Exactly. It's like it's a constant, isn't it?
A barrage of it. Yeah. And we know that every time we switch attention from one thing to another, your brain glucose goes, your reserves go down, because we can measure that it takes energy to switch concentration from one thing to another, and we do that all the time. So we're always getting more exhausted, and we also know that, you know, the effect. I mean, what's interesting as well is actually, so I had pretty bad PTSD, which I think is from an event when I was about 16.
Oh, wow.
And as a result, I'm super sensitive to the environment around me, and I didn't really realise it. And the sort of, the interesting thing is me writing this book on essentially like a formula for design happiness and well-being.
I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
I had to read it very quickly before Light 24.
Just repeat that instead of echoing.
No, it was much more. I know it was you know, you spoke 15 minutes there. It's a thick, decent book. But it's very nice. It's nicely illustrated as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, that was it for me. Really, it was because, you know, I'd never really thought about any of these. You know, I ended up in the design industry kind of by accident anyway, and I've kind of explained it. But, you know, sort of my brother gave me a box of lights and went, "Go on, see who wants these." And I was like, "All right," and just discovered light and how little I knew.
Yeah.
But also throughout that journey, I realised that, you know, this PTSD that I'd never really addressed ended up being something that was really exacerbated. I didn't realise how sensitive I was until you hit 30 and your energy reserves start decreasing. I was basically running off pure adrenaline. And then age 30, suddenly, you know, blue light was really getting to me in harsh environments and straight lines and you know, unnatural colours and the hustle and bustle and, you know, glare of the world in which we live, which is very modern. And I don't know, the reason I think I suddenly started going on a mad sort of adventure with it is to understand why we respond in a stressful environment. And what I find fascinating is, you know, particularly with your autoimmune disease and stuff, were you more, you said you were more responsive to stressful environments as a result, or you just became more aware of the need to look after yourself? Or
I think a little bit of both. I think there's a little bit of you know, when you find out you've got something, you're more sensitive anyway.
Of course,
but it really drove me to try and navigate a path for me and my family predominantly, but out of that, in my work life, to take that into the design. And you talk about light and the effects of the blue light on our on all aspects, our physiological aspects of us, the right hormones, what it's depleting as we're sitting in, not just looking. Everyone says, iPhones, iPads, computer screens, but like me and you discuss a lot, it's about the light in hospitals, in airports, in classrooms. I mean, classrooms, knowing what we know about blue light and its inhibiting ability on your cognitive function, it astounds me that classrooms all over the UK and the world have some of the worst lighting known to the design
glare,
industry.
which is now neuroimmunology can prove that damages your immune system, and flicker, which all of them have, and that used to be used by the CIA for torture.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy. And I know that there's a lot of people say, well, look, the research isn't, because there's so many variables in hospitals, for example, where the World Health Organization has suggested night shift work in hospitals is probably carcinogenic. And we can't necessarily isolate blue light, but there are so many examples of, we know that interphotoretinal ganglion cells, which are the cells on the top of the retina that respond to blue light and create cortisol, and that's been proven, going against your natural biology of needing to rest when the sun sets and instead getting a dose of blue light that has been proven to improve your energy and focus as much as a double espresso. These lights are,
but you need that cortisol naturally. That's what you're talking about with the espresso, the coffee, isn't it? You wake up in the morning, you get that blue light from the sun, but it's combined with all the other spectrums of light that produces your cortisol, which is your coffee sort of analogy. But then we're spending the rest of the day looking at blue light, and so your body's just constantly in fight or flight, isn't it?
Exactly. And what I find fascinating is actually, if you look at the world being made up of wavelengths, there's this might be a little bit woo-woo, but alternating current, when you put a plug into a wall, it goes, up and down like a sort of wave in the ocean. Yeah. And I couldn't, I was just.
Which is why you get flicker, isn't that?
Yeah, exactly. So you get leading and trailing edge. Well, it's partly the frequency, and it being non-visual flicker. I think it's above 10,000 hertz or something. I can't remember the exact numbers, but anything less than that, and your body can see it, and it's basically subconsciously giving you a headache and seizures and stuff for people with predisposed to that. But what I find really fascinating is, even if you look at like the body in general, blood, your mitochondria, every single cell in your body creates electricity. We are walking gigajoules of electricity, of current. And there was again, for my PTSD, I had some sort of Eastern medicine, and this applied to me some acupuncture, and this guy said, he was like, look, do you know how the chakras work? And I was like, oh yeah, chakras, yeah, sure, mate, all right, come by, oh my lord. But yeah, he said, look, your brain is essentially the sort of main hard drive of electrical current in your body, and if you imagine current, which is alternating, it kind of pulses out and then it crosses over again, and then it crosses over, and they cross over at each of your chakra points. And I was like, sure, mate, yeah, whatever. And then he ended up taking a crystal, and I can hear some viewers being like, okay, now we're getting very, very woo-woo, but I couldn't unsee it. He literally went, right, put your hand up, and I'm going to push down on it. And I could resist him pushing my hand down. And with a crystal, he basically reversed the charge of whatever he said was my chakras, and stopped the polarity of what was, he said, my electricity based on blood flow and current in my body. And he could literally move my arm down with a feather. Like, it was absolutely crazy. So I just find it interesting.
I've heard that so many times, like from varying different, whether you're looking at allergies or whatever it is, and you're sort of holding a bar of chocolate, and
the resistance to your body.
The resistance to your body, and you can just push the hand away, and your body's natural response is to tell you exactly whether it's good for you or bad for you. But I think that's
holistic design, right?
That is holistic design. And we talk about hospitals, we sort of we digressed there, because it was a really interesting, not only light and the quality of the light. Obviously, first of all, we want natural light. I know you produce artificial light, but nothing's better than
we try and mimic natural light.
But then in the evening, then when there's no light, especially in the dark winters in the UK, It's that quality of light, the position of that light, the color of that light, the feeling of that light, and getting our body to, from our cortisol to our serotonin to our melatonin. And I just feel that's not there in hospitals. Interestingly, when my firstborn Arlo was, and we were going for a sort of a natural birth scenario, I saw two different sides to the hospital. Chelsea and Westminster, amazing hospital, amazing people working there. And we went for my wife Chloe went for a water birth with gas in it. And we went into this lovely room with wooden walls, with lovely warm light, with a water bath, a beanbag for me, music, tactile surfaces, lovely fabrics, the right lighting.
Just calm.
But in an absolute paradoxal planet, that wasn't working. Complications. We had to go into the main unit, and it was like being hit by an avalanche of noises, white, harsh, sharp surfaces, white light, and I was just, it struck me. I was like, I can't believe that I know that white and cleanliness go hand in hand, and hospitals need to be clean, but they don't need to be like that. And that goes with homes. Like you sent me over some notes about calm, and whilst designing something calm is really good for your physiology, what is calm? Is calm just plain? Or is calm something richer than that? If you're designing, we're designing a passive house, and we've designed this entrance with, a lovely timber door, and you go into a hall, and it's got these huge glass panels looking out into woodland. Now that, for me, is the essence of calm. But
agreed.
Actually, woodland is just rich with matter and material. It's sort of woodland in design. If you were going to take a picture of woodland, you call it maximalist design, not minimalist design. Whereas human beings have sort of somehow feel that minimalist design is calmer than maximalist. So what is calm is subjective, isn't it?
Well, this has been one of the sort of interesting things on my sort of adventure in speaking to people with different perspectives, different roles, different, we've got researchers, we've got, applied designers, we've got sort of, an interesting cross section, really. One of the interesting things is, I guess with a home, which I guess predominantly you're in residential, right? Yeah. So you can actually personalize around a specific couple or family. You can hone in on a bedroom for that individual's needs can be completely bespoke to what makes them feel the essence of calm. Or maybe they need encouragement to get up in the morning, so they don't want calm, they want vivacity, and
they want a red room.
Exactly. Let's fire up for the day, and you kind of a boxing bag, whatever it might be for that individual's needs. What's interesting is actually speaking to people that are a little bit more on the commercial workspace or hotels or things like that, where the interesting sort of leaders in that space seem to create multiple variants of spaces that multiple individuals with different requirements can seek out their space. How do you find in the built environment in residential spaces, do you feel like you have a bit more scope to really personalize that exact habitat that tribal unit really needs? Or do you still have to create a little bit of a sort of cohesive one size fits all?
As a Palladian, as a practice, we pride ourselves on designing unique personalized spaces for our clients, and that is very much our memorandum. That is what we really are proud of. Some people look for a house style, or a lot of people say there is a trend that goes through, but also what goes through our our projects, I suppose, is like you said at the beginning, is detail, our attention to detail in design. But to answer your question, we have the great luxury of getting to know our clients, like what they do, how they get up in the morning, what they do
You become
during
like
the
their
day.
therapist almost, in
Well,
terms of like how intimately you get to know their
Well, definitely. I mean,
needs
you've
and
got
wants
you've
and-
got partners who ultimately will disagree or have different views or different approaches on how the bedroom's going to look or the bathroom or what the children are going to do at various times of the day.
And often couples are yin and yang as well, right?
Absolutely.
You get so my grandparents are polar opposites, and they said
Yeah.
that my granny was the dance, my grandpa was the rock on which my granny could dance on. Do you know what I mean? So you have it. So how you do a design brief?
It's a nice
for that.
visual, that.
I
Isn't
know.
it?
It's like,
Yeah.
But designing with those oxymoronic kind of challenges as well.
Yeah, well, the yin and the yang. It is the perfect way to describe designing for couples. There is, and it's a wonderful dance. I'll use that image of dancing around the design on what it is, because it's a long process. It might be a half a year, a year and a half design process, and during that time, opinions change and views change, and what's important to them changes. Sometimes our clients have children halfway through a design process, and then suddenly, it changes. And so, yes, I mean, each space is designed differently, whether it's a study for our client, or it's the bedroom for their children, or it's the kitchen for the family, or it's a playroom, or whatever it is, a really nice dining room. Residential architecture is so unique in that every single room is a mini project, and it takes a lot of design and time and effort to get it right for our clients.
So some of the principles you adopt are feng shui. Is it feng shui?
Yeah, feng shui. we
Never know how to pronounce it.
We do. I mean, sometimes clients come to us and say we want to incorporate feng shui into our designs, and we actually bring in a consultant, because we work with this wonderful woman, and she is a master, a feng shui master actually, and she is super experienced, and
Also wearing a cape.
she's a genius. And a little bit going back to my doctor analogy, and I think NHS doctors are wonderful, by the way, for the audience. But in terms of looking at it holistically, the feng shui master, she'll ask them where they've lived previously, where they've worked, what their environment is now, looking at who's the dancer and who's the rock in the relationship, and designing, and that will then inform the design that we then work with her to deliver. And obviously, working with these professionals, a lot rubs off on you. So we are not feng shui masters, but we work with
collaboration.
We collaborate with them. There's nothing worse than trying to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So where we are not specialists, we will introduce specialists for, whether it's electromagnetic specialist. I have a really good understanding, as do you. But as where lighting and lighting specialists, I don't know my AC and DC currents well enough to do a wiring circuit, but I know the effects of those.
Well, it's like we
cables.
rely on lighting designers to get
Yeah.
the best out of our products. We make
Exactly.
Scientifically informed product designs with neuroaesthetics and biophilic principles, etc. And we go, look, we've done the best product we can possibly make. Have you got any feedback? Yes, this, right, done. Can you make it look awesome now? And they're like, leave it to us. You know what I mean? So everyone needs to. It's yeah.
It's like your champagne bezel. People go, do I want a champagne bezel? But actually, 90% of the time, if you ever do look up at a light, you're not. The light is on. If the light is off, generally you can't see the light because it's dark by virtue, and unless it's the middle of the day. But you don't. People get a little bit carried away with what the actual light looks like rather than what it. I mean, it's very important what it looks like, and it's. I think making it as subtle as possible, and you've got wonderful plastered in and everything, but how the light behaves is, for me, and I finished a project for a client in Mayfair recently, and he was just like, the light is so warm, it's like giving you a hug. And that for me, you know, is, I was like, that's bad.
And you shouldn't see it. It should be just
No.
the magic of lighting really is. It just, you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know how it's glowing, but it just does in the right way. And there's all the little design features, you know, it's sort of like, you know, and obviously this isn't really about the product, but having, you know, textured finishes and stuff like that, and having, you know, I think we've got 1 million possible finishes, which seems like overkill, but what it is we call it a kit of lighting instruments to then hone the effect of that light when it comes out of the fitting to match exactly the colour of the ironmongery and everything else in between. It says bringing.
It's so important, that, isn't it? You know, we spend, you know, our interior design team spend hours, you know, over the tonal difference of some very similar fabrics.
And you light it with an iPhone tool.
And then you go in and put a 25 quid spotlight, and it changes the colour of that material by 50%.
Well, this was the thing as well, because when I said, you know, when I said my brother was, you know, in the company before me, when I joined, because I felt suddenly for the first time the veil drop, and on the tube I'd start feeling like really tense. I can understand why. And then I discovered blue light glasses. I popped them on, and suddenly I was like, oh god, these are like, you know, in Big Daddy when he wears those invisibility glasses, and you go, like, it felt like that. I suddenly got my space back. I was like, god, whether it's psychosomatic or what.
Yeah,
and
I
then
don't
it was
have
the
my
invisible
light
side.
blocking, but these are my normal ones, and I now, when I look at an iPad or my computer screen with these ones, I'm like,
Well, we both use Iris as well, that app on our Mac as well, right? Both done presentations with that, taking the screen.
Leave it on, whoops.
Exactly. I mean, so sustainability is obviously a big thing now in the whole sort of like holistic approach to design. So do you feel like there's a trade-off with regards to creating a building that feels optimal for that design brief you're trying to sort of match for your clients and being green, or do you think they work together in a beneficial way? Or
they can definitely coexist. I think, you know, sustainability, building a healthy home is sustainable because you're using the right materials and making sure that those materials last a long time, and designing with materials that actually get better with age. You know, like a good wine, they get better with age to a certain point. But and using those right materials, using texture to create the luxury, and having that sustainable. And you know, but a lot of our projects obviously were coming to houses that had been previously designed by someone else. And I think a lot in our responsibility, I think in Europe, the biggest waste industry is the property industry in the whole of Europe. There was a great exhibition at the Design Museum in Kensington about that, and it really triggered something for me. It was sort of 6-7 years ago, how much waste we are producing. And so when we come into a project, I think the first thing that we look at is what can be salvaged in here, whether it's sofas, kitchens, lights, handles,
upholstering or reworking,
because a lot of them are high value. You know, you've got sort of, you know, lovely brass, you know, well, some people might think they're lovely, others not, but that's subjective. But the quality of the products are often very good. And actually, if you just take them out, there are a lot of companies we work with, kitchen companies, you know, ironmongery companies, who will take them and upcycle them or resell them, or, you know, we take furniture to auctions, and you know, that is the first. And then designing from a sustainability point of view, you know, going back to Passive House, I suppose that is the ultimate benchmark of sustainability and use. You know, how much energy we're using in the operation of the house, but then actually using models to understand how much carbon is in the construction of it, because they're two very different elements. There's the in-use sustainability, but there's the sustainability of the materials used in construction. We all know that concrete, steel, products like that are super high in their carbon usage. Carbon usage seems to be the kind of predominant sort of benchmark of how we measure sustainability. I think it's a little bit one-dimensional, but we try and where we can use, and this comes into comfort. I said comfort is the new luxury. What materials we're using to insulate it. We've just finished a house in Redcliffe Square where we insulated the house with natural materials, 100% natural materials, and that reduces the need for sound insulation because of the sound deadening, so it's a much more enjoyable environment to be in, a little bit like this studio here. But also the longevity of that, rather than using phenolic foams, petrochemical based materials, trying to use more sustainable materials and keeping the carbon locked up in the project rather than using it.
But I feel like one of the interesting things when people come to my house, so I had one room in my house when I first moved in with my wife, girlfriend at the time, but it was, you can do whatever you want to this room, this is your space. I was like, thank you very much. So I decided, I was alright, this is going to be this sort of den, the man cave, if you call it that. And I was like, right, well, I know that from a colour psychology point of view, I like dark muted blue black, because that's sort of nighttime and calming, grounding. I also know that I need to have it as a living material, low gloss, because that brings it alive and that makes it feel like a sort of a tactile, additional visceral experience of the room. So I've got a lime wash bow work, if you know the brand, which is really nice. And when people come into that room, and then I have got like sort of brass sort of accents to try and offset it, create contrast, but also lift a little bit of energy back into the room. And when people walk into the room, they always comment on it. They're like, bloody hell, this is such a cool room. And I'm like, science, baby.
Science.
It does actually add up. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously you emphasize the importance of materiality. How do you use texture and aging and things like that when considering the emotional response that you want within an environment?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you answered that very eloquently yourself about your man cave. It's layering of materials. It's not just your bowerwork paint, which is a wonderful clay-based paint, and there are lots of other different clay-based paints that give that lovely matte, textured finish. But it's the layering, starting with a blank canvas and building up. Using materials, architectural materials, interior architecture, finishes, all the way through to the fabrics, the sort of your green sofa with ivory buttons on it, and having that layer of material to feel that it's a very soothing environment. It doesn't always want to be a soothing environment, but bedrooms, bathrooms, they're naturally wanting to be soothing environments, and designing using the right materials, timbers. Some people love stones, marbles, quartz.
What about scent?
Scent.
Consider scent?
Scent's a difficult one because
you can get familiar to
you
it.
can.
Same with,
I mean, off-gassing as well is a problem. A new house, like a new car, if you've got that smell of paint, it is an off-gassing, whether that VOC, which is a volatile organic compound, which it doesn't necessarily come from toxic materials. It comes, pine off-gasses VOC, and you can smell it. It's a wonderful smell. But I think it is one of the very important senses, isn't it? Smell. Bringing in artificial smell, we have done that. A company called Scentair, actually, because we work a lot with ventilation, mechanical ventilation, passive houses. Despite them being called passive houses, they actually work on mechanical ventilation, and so that you are constantly pumping filtered fresh air into spaces and extracting stale air. So by doing that, you can actually then put in a smell of pine or something like that, which
Do you ever use biomorphism or biomimicry to do that? I mean, I know. So Alex your brother is
Yes,
Passive
big,
House
yeah.
certified. Would he
Yeah.
look at?
No, Alex Birch is our head of architecture.
I see. Okay.
So Beetle.
Not Beetle.
No, so Beetle, who
Also
is
Alex,
who is called
yeah,
Alexander
exactly,
by birth, but
Yeah.
so he's building biologist, and Alex, our head of architecture, is Passive House. But sorry, your question was.
Would you use things like? Because I know the Dyson hand dryer, the air
Yes.
blade over it, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
uses changing volumes of. So
Is
you
it
have a small
magnetic?
opening and a.
Or
Well, I
is
think it's a fan
Yeah.
that draws air into a very small opening that then very quickly expands.
Yeah.
So because of that
Creating
change
the
in pressure, it
vortex.
creates a pull through a vortex of.
Yeah.
I mean, that also is sort of biomimetic in some form. I think I'm making that up
Yeah.
completely, but I'm sure there's something in
Well,
nature.
I'm gonna go
Whereas,
with it.
but is there anything in nature that allows you to sort of do? And this might be a question more for Alex, and no one can be a master of everything. But like, do you ever look at nature to create spaces and structures that can help increase, say, airflow and scent and calm, or is it sort of more of a multi-layered? Because I guess you're also stuck slightly with the straight lines of the building that you inherit, right?
Or round.
Or
Or
yeah. But do you introduce curves and
yeah, I mean, we do.
shapes or
We definitely do that, and we love building internal structural elements, sculptural elements like staircase, having elliptical staircases, arches through doors, and that sort of brings me to sort of biogeometry, which is sort of an ancient tradition of building, going back to Egyptian pyramids, and using mathematical form to build energy. You go into a room and you go, God, there's amazing energy in here. That is wholeheartedly most likely down to
the golden ratio,
a golden ratio of numbers
and fractals as well, right? So
yes.
it's 1 to 1.16 or something, and you get the sort of conch swirl, which is about distribution of stuff in a room and things like that.
Yeah, and you've got that's taken all the way through into photography and the classic photographic lines, and that conch is one of those
where you're framing things in a
you've got your your visual surds, and so yes, I mean, we take all of that. That's the art and the science of architecture being brought together using nature. Like often you come and do CPDs in our office, and you say there are no straight lines in nature, or very few straight lines in nature, and that's something that we try and pick up on. Obviously you want straight walls by virtue going up straight, not always, but I suppose it's an important element then to bring in something more softer and more feminine. And
do you feel inclined to say this is something about are there favourite features in that space often the staircases that are curved, or do you get positive comments
whenever we design something with shape? People comment on it. People don't comment on straight walls really, but they'll comment on shapes, color, abnormal shapes, colors, anything that is not normal.
There's the richness, isn't it? It's that like actually giving something back through design,
replicating
nature.
Yeah,
right.
Well, ultimately, it's everybody not everybody, but I haven't come across a human being who hasn't enjoyed walking through nature. So, biophilic design, it's a big buzzword at the moment, and I think people are becoming more and more health conscious because we are just being bombarded through food pollution, whether that's Wi-Fi pollution, air pollution, water pollution. It is not getting better at the moment. Hopefully it will. I've got great faith in humanity that we are using technology to really bring air pollution hasn't been better in the last 100 years or so. Was it 150 years I was reading recently? So it's not all doom and gloom, and I think if we can just take all of that desire for organic food, for going to the gym, into our design of our houses, then why wouldn't we? And it doesn't cost any more to design a house well than it does to design a house badly.
What do you think it is that is the defining characteristic between designing well and designing badly?
Passion.
Yeah.
I think passion and enthusiasm for designing and actually wanting to design something. You go through the sort of decades of design, and you look at buildings being designed, and you look at sort of post-war, where there was a lot of trauma, and the buildings that were designed, admittedly they had to go up quickly because a lot of them were destroyed. But they're, the architecture, post-war architecture is not my favourite.
I think a lot of people would say that.
And I can't remember where I was reading it, but just talking about, going through the sort of decades and centuries of architectural design and the happiness of human beings, humanity as a whole, and you look at it, and I think we are coming to a point now in my lifetime. I'm 47, but I think design really is starting to improve. I think there's a lot of passion in design. I think there's a lot of emphasis on designing beautiful, sustainable, and buildings that are going to look amazing in 100, 200 years, and not built to be ripped down. A lot of buildings in 60s, 70s, 80s weren't built to last. And I think that is truly sustainable. If you can design something that will look beautiful and stand the test of time in its materiality for 200 years, then that is more sustainable than anything.
Which sector do you think needs the most
Attention.
reform? Yeah.
I think it's across I think residential is maybe ahead of the curve. I'd love to see hospitals and education. Yeah, it's not my genre. It's not my genre, but I go into my son's classroom and I see the lighting, I see the way they're designed, and I'm like, I cannot believe the most precious things to us as human beings are our children. Well, there are obviously people who don't have children, so but
I think people say that I don't have children, right? And we still sympathise with the fact that an extremely deep level of vulnerability and also protection.
Yeah. You've recently become an uncle, haven't you?
Yeah.
So
thrice.
Twins
have come along recently, who just tripled my brother's workload.
But you can see your love and devotion for them. I'm like, why on earth are we not spending our? And it doesn't need to be money. It's not huge money. These schools they have huge amounts of money, particularly the private sector, and it baffles me. Utterly baffling.
Well, what do you think the sort of most cost-effective, easy solution to poor design would be? So say, for example, a state school in an area that isn't, particularly affluent, doesn't have the big budgets for refurbs or what have you, and they're penny pinching, obviously understandably, not penny pinching, but counting the pennies. What do you think the easiest carte blanche application of a design upgrade? Colour. Yeah. I
mean, I'm hoping you'll agree with me that painting doesn't cost a huge amount. And, they all go in their cycles of needing a fresh coat of paint. But painting and just changing the light bulbs, like it's really it's disappointing that the government just want more and more efficient. We're spending to get from where we are to reducing another watt in a light bulb to the detriment.
Yeah, you're talking to one of the most frustrated people out there.
Yes. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but it is. We're designing a house in Kenya at the moment, and light is really important out there, and the reason why blue light is really important not to have out in tropical countries is because it attracts mosquitoes. Because insects are attracted to blue light. I'm teaching you to suck eggs.
One of our first podcasts that we did was actually with a really cool double girl team from Leeds Control.
Yeah.
And they were telling us about this story in, I think it was Madrid, where the amount of intensity of blue light was enabling African mosquitoes that were able to live because of the intensity of the light that otherwise would not have been present in Madrid, but because of light pollution,
they
could come over and But suddenly, people in Madrid were getting very sick because diseases that were prevalent in these mosquitoes that previously weren't able to live in this environment were actually, the light pollution was so bad they could live and then create the diseases within the Madrid population. Well, it shows just how crazy the level of sort of biodiversity sort of like alteration has happened as a result of, like you say, blue wavelengths and
light and colour.
Well,
it's a simple change. You can just change a classroom, go into a classroom. I mean, you look at the sort of that classical panel ceiling lighting. I don't know, there's a technical terminology for those awful. I remember
what's it called?
Remember at Light 24 we were in that room and the
irony
of the
everyone talking about good design and they were like, a perfect example, look up, don't do that.
No. And it was that typical sort of temporary fabric ceiling with bright white lights, but I see that in classrooms all over.
That was my classroom. Explains a lot.
Yes.
But it is crazy. I mean, so I was actually talking to Grant Shapps last year. I think it was last year. The years are blending these days. But had a chat with him and I presented this whole case study of essentially what is my book. I was like, look, using organic design principles, you could save the NHS sort of like £100 million a year-ish. You can decrease the noise levels in school, which means teachers can have more control. You can improve the memory retention and learning rates and test scores of individuals. You can decrease mortality rates in hostels. You can get hoteliers to spend more and get better to earn more and get better reviews. You can triple productivity in the workplace. In every single sector of the economy, there is the possibility to improve the health, well-being, and performance of mankind just by allowing orange in the evening, indirect lighting, loosening up the guidelines of it being 500 lux en masse everywhere, which isn't misunderstood by contractors because that's not the rules, it's just what they do. So there's a huge issue with, and I explained it to him and said, these Part L regs, which are suddenly being, as you say, we want you to do...
They're driving us in the other direction.
Well, I think it's like 95 lumens per circuit watt for Part L2, so commercial. So... we're also getting pressure as manufacturers to start doing EPDs, environmental product declarations, which is about £12,000 per range or product. So for us as a small to medium company, that would be about 200 grand. And then we find out that in real terms, when you then put those products into an environment, the way that the carbon credits are, giving you tax breaks from a big development perspective, which is mainly the commercial route in which that applies, they're looking for 135. So there's all this misalignment on, big property developers saying we want 135, designers saying we want 95 and we want EPDs, government saying we want like 160. And I'm like, well, from the government, if you're asking for us to do 160, the only thing we can do is make the lights glarier and have more blue light. And that is going to damage education, damage the reviews on Google for... Hawks more, and even McDonald's are about the same, but Flatiron, all those kind of restaurants, and then also the economy, like generally will suffer because as we're more stressed, we can measure this with neuroimmunology tech nowadays.
Well, it's the dopamine effect on children. I just look at my own children. You put them in front of a screen or an iPad or whatever it is, TV. And it is factual that blue light and screens reduces dopamine. I mean, to an acute level. And if we can just increase dopamine levels in classrooms, kids are going to learn better. Teachers are going to have more control over the kids, and they're going to eat better. And it's the unwrapping cycle of everything.
So what's your philosophy for designing for longevity, spaces that age gracefully, both structurally but also from a stylistic point of view? Because it's quite a difficult one to navigate.
I bore everybody in our studio. I'm like, how is that material going to look?
You
in
got
50
fresh
years?
listeners here. You're in a safe space.
But it's asking the question of every material we're putting into it, from the windows that we're putting in, whether they're triple glazed passive house windows or listed building replacement windows. How are those windows going to perform in 100 years? How are they going to look in 100 years? And are they going to last 100 years? You've got to, one thing that architecture does teach you, or teaches our architects, is to challenge design. Like, is that the right material for that? And that goes to interior design. You see wonderful sofas made 100 years ago that are still, you can still recover. Okay, maybe the springs need a little bit of adjusting, but ultimately, if it's built well,
they often say that they don't make them like that anymore.
That sofa, yes,
and it really is true.
Which goes at Christie's for unheard amounts of money. But so I think buy right and buy once, design right, design once would be my mantra. Like the door handles that we're using. I love patina being 1,000 touches on that or 100,000 touches on that door handle. What's it going to look like? It's like if it started off unlacquered brass, what's it going to look like? If it started off an aged brass or a bronze color, what's it going to look like?
It's like if you have a plant. Someone did this analogy during lockdown that if you have a plant pot and you get it, it's made of clay. You get it brand new and you go, that's really aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
After 2 years of watering it and seeing the oxidization and the living,
and it goes green a little bit on the outside.
Yeah, suddenly that's a real living thing, like bark on a tree or whatever. I mean, this is what a lot of the stuff we do oxidized copper and bronze and verdigris and sandstone, microstone, and it looks like just a bit of a sort of like, oh look, we do only finished, but it's. We introduced that because of the science, the emotional connection to it.
Queen Anne listed buildings, Georgian listed buildings, they look absolutely beautiful. That sandstone, the Portland stone has got it. It tells a story.
I bet the Statue of Liberty looked okay before it went green.
Yeah,
but a bit bling bling. Now it's green. You're like, wow, look at that.
It's beautiful.
A real living,
yeah. But that is like living things, like biophilia. Like it is, it's the organic. What is it? The wabi sabi, the perfection and imperfection. Again, quite a coined phrase at the moment. But it is lovely that, and I love timber. I love the different types of timber. I'm learning a lot about different types of timber, what they do in environment in Africa versus different types of timber available in Europe and the UK, and what actually comes from the other side of the world and what is actually locally sourced and sustainably sourced. But I think using the right materials and the right application is fundamental. Fundamental.
So how important is the choice of the plot or building site as well in terms of that?
God, if you could choose. I mean, I think choice is probably one of the hardest thing for our clients. Is if it's in London, we work on refurbs mostly, sometimes new builds. In the countryside, it's you are lucky to find a really nice plot.
I guess you've got refurbs maybe with extensions, so you'd have maybe scope to
you can do new.
I
mean, as designers, we love to have a little bit of a new build within a refurb, and the orientation of it, doing sun studies, seeing what rooms. All of our projects now are built on a 3D model, and with technology now we can put the trees where we want them around the house, and we can see what the sun's going to do, because the sun doesn't rise and set at the same points at different times of the year.
Yeah, of course.
Even on the equator, it doesn't. When I thought I naively thought it would, being on the equator, but it doesn't. The spring, the summer and winter sun paths are different on the equator, and that it's a big point. Overheating in the UK is probably a bigger point now than under insulated. So we're looking at, a lot of our clients want air conditioning. We're like, well, let's try and design around not needing air conditioning as much. Okay, our client, I'm not going to say no, we're not putting air conditioning in, but let's try and not use it as much as you would otherwise.
Have a sort of through flow from top of the building with a sort of air catchment.
Using a stack effect where you're have an opening roof or window at the top of the house and it sucks all the air out. That's your first effect. Minimizing solar gain, using architectural design, overhangs, clever things like that. We want the winter sun in for passive heating. We don't want summer sun coming in for solar gain, because the UK is just getting warmer and warmer, especially down in the sunny southeast. So
wine country now.
Wine country, isn't it? Can't grow anything in Burgundy now. It has to be Kent. So I'd say that's what is the perfect plot? Do you want to be facing south? Do you want to be facing east? But it's really fun when you're doing a new build where we're putting the bedrooms and where we're putting the kitchen.
I bet that's the designer's dream, right?
Yeah, where what, but also you design a house around what habits that person has. Do they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning? They're going to see the rising sun at this time of year, but not in the winter. And so positioning the bedroom to suit that.
Well, we did. So I did a lecture for some master students in Oslo doing a lighting course, and it was interesting explaining, because obviously they already knew the legislation and in principle 3 years of whatever it was, of learning how to sort of do the designs, the layouts, all that kind of stuff, and then coming in and saying, well, look, here's the neuroscience of light and biophilic design and evolution, how you tick, and the way that they started sort of applying the legislation that building regs that limited their designs, but then using the neuroscientific knowledge to perhaps tweak the orientation of the building. They created this hotel that they called the Chrono Hotel, which was, in the East, you would check in, you do, a body clock test, and they go a chronotype test, which is your inherited wake and sleep cycles. We all have a different time. You have early birds, you have night owls, you have insomniacs, and everything in between. And what was interesting is they put all of the people that were good in the morning on the East side, and then all the sort of people that were sort of more night owls in the West. And it was interesting to see how an entire building was rotated around an individual's requirements and stuff like that. That's and how that can change. But but again, it brings it back to that impact of learning and education and the passion, really, which you so clearly have. And hearing you talk about Kenyan timber compared to UK timber, you have, well, you said African, right? I'm assuming it was Kenyan, because of your Kenyan project, right? And it's the clear enthusiasm and passion that you have that I think transcends you to your brother and yourself and your practice to really incorporate not only the principles of building biology, but to synthesize it down to 5 of your own. And honestly, I think that's really, 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 really cool, and I think it's very inspirational.
Thank you. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about everything from light, which you always educate me in something new around light every time I see you around. But I think your knowledge around light has just gone so far beyond that, and it's sort of it's really spans right into sort of building biology and elements that is very important to the fundamental principles of building biology and what we can do for our clients, but also for the wider building design community. It doesn't, our clients can sometimes justify the more sustainable materials, which are perhaps slightly more expensive, but there are simple fixes. And I think if we can persuade legislation to be changed to have an emphasis on human health in the built environment rather than just on sustainability and risk. That is, the government is just about how green is this light or this window and how safe is it?
Well, how do I hit these metrics for the next 4 years so they give me another 4 years?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
nuts. It's as short-sighted as that. And I think one of the interesting things is, looking at the process in which buildings are designed. So I'm really passionate about light. That translates to our products. That then appeals to people like yourself because you're very passionate about that holistic approach.
Yeah.
And those marry up nicely. So then you end up with a good design proposal to a client. In residential, that tends to, because you have more of a relationship from the start to the end of the project, see itself transcend into reality. But what happens often with commercial spaces and hospitality is the structure of the building process means that as the initial design proposal begins, as you go forward, you tend to sort of leave and go to a different project. The contractor or builder then takes over.
And just throws everything out the window.
Well, their priorities are literally to drive cost out and get the job done. So they go, I can get you that light for a tenner, or I can get you that timber for half price, or I can get you that mesh for 5%, whatever it might be. And then all that richness disappears. And it's again throwing that other curveball in, which is legislation. As you say, you've got governments going, we need you to do this because this is the numbers and those are the numbers. And you go, you're idiots. You don't understand the holistic approach. So I think a big part of it is education.
But it happens in our world in residential as well. You know, we're designing a house and we're putting in some really good quality spotlights. You know, say £100 a pop or whatever it is, plus transformer and everything like that. And then you've got your sort of £20 spotlight that is of very poor quality light, but looks not wholly different. It's a spotlight that sits in the ceiling and lights the space beneath it. And trying to educate our clients on the difference in value, because sometimes they're just saying, well, it's kind of like my space, why do I need to spend an extra 5x on a product that I don't see the value in? And there's still even with the educated, there's a lot of education to be done.
Well, I think that's also why you're, going and talking on panels, and like I say, do it so well in such a sort of synthesized way. So encourage people strongly to get in touch with you and see the sort of end result, or even check out your website, because it's the projects you do are definitely very special and unique. But Hugo, it's been
thank you, son.
Awesome talking, and we'll obviously put the links to your website, all that kind of stuff underneath. But
Palladian.design.
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 Perfect.
That's our I don't think I said at the beginning what the name of our company, but anyway.
There you go. We've heard it a couple of times on the way here, but Palladian. So based in Battersea now.
We're Battersea Reach.
I've been to your offices as well, and that is also as you say, comfort is luxury.
Yes,
it's comfortable.
Thank you.
It's very comfortable.
Thank you.
It did really nice to talk to you.
Lovely
Thank you so
see
much for your time. You too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's it for this episode of In Light of It All, the show that distills complex science and design research into facts you'll actually remember. If you enjoyed it, follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube so you don't miss the next one. And if you have 30 seconds, please do leave a review. It helps much more than you think. If you've got a question or would like to appear or know someone else whose work we should uncover, feel free to email me at xander@lighttribe.co.uk or just add me on LinkedIn. And remember, the more you understand light, the more you understand how the world works. See you next time.